Let's understand scope chain and closure. Let's say we have a function that has the name print, for example, and inside of this function we have the value set, for example, which can be equal to, let's say, 5, for example. Now let's also say instead of this function we define another function that can be print2, for example. The name doesn't really matter too much, and we're just going to define set once again. So we say this time set is going to be equal to 6. And now let's say console.log, let's log z right here, and we're going to call print2 inside of this function. Now we are going to call print right here, and we're going to run the code. And as you can see, we're getting 6 in the console. And the reason for this is scope chain. So as you know, usually a variable exists within the scope of a function. So in this case, everything right here belongs to the scope of this function, so of the outer function print. And everything right here belongs to the scope of the inner function print2. So now when we want to access the variable set, it works like this. It first takes a look within its own scope and checks whether it has a variable set. If it has a variable set, it is going to use that variable set. If it does not have a variable set, for example, it is going to go one level up and it is going to look here for a variable set. If it has the variable set, it is going to use this variable set. As you can see, now we have 5. If it does not have a variable set, it is going to go one level up. And let's say we have a variable set of 3 right here. We're going to run the code. And if it finds the variable set right here, it will use that one. And it's going to print it out. So right here we have 3. Otherwise, it did not find the variable and we're getting an error. So when accessing a variable, it starts from inner to outer. Now let's take a look at closure. So let's say we're going to have a function that has the name outer, for example. And inside of this function, we define a variable. So let count be equal to 0, for example. And inside of this function, we will return another function. So let's say this here's the function inner, for example. And this function just says count plus plus, so increments the count by 1. And we need the function keyword right here. And now we're also going to console.log the count. So now let's say we are going to have const counter, which is equal to outer, like that. And now let's say we're going to call counter, and we're going to call counter once again. Let's run the code. And as you can see, we're getting 1 and we're getting 2. So somehow this inner function, so this function is able to keep track of the count, even though we've defined the count inside of the outer variable. And what is happening here is called closure. So every time you return a function inside of another function, this inner function is able to keep track of the variables defined in the outer function. And I know this can be confusing, and I'm also going to be honest, you barely ever need this. So it's cool if you have heard of it, but it's very unlikely that you need this.